talking to the writer of the upcoming Netflix film, The Starling. Mr. Matt Morris, how are you today, sir?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just got done watching the film a few minutes ago. But before we get into the film, I got a few questions here for you. What was your first job within the TV movie industry?
Oh boy. My first job was as a production assistant on a PBS documentary series called Future Quest, hosted by Jeff Goldblum, believe it or not.
Awesome.
Yeah, he was pretty wild. I mean, he was an interesting guy.
What made you want to become a screenwriter?
I think it was just a strong desire to move people like I got moved by films. I really wanted to do that. It's like just simple invitation. I just wanted to do what they did. I wanted to make people feel that same way. Love film, love the way it made me feel. Wanted to be able to make people feel the same thing I do and create those stories that do it.
What are some of the early screenwriters that you kind of looked at whenever you started to begin to pursue that chase?
Yeah, I would say Robert Bolt, who wrote some real classics like Lawrence of Arabia. He wrote The Mission. I think it was like partly because he had written both of those, such a disparity. It's amazing, because The Mission was very different. I was pretty amazed by his skill. Lawrence Kasdan, and as I remember being young and watching The Empire Strikes Back, which was at the time to me so far. I mean, I love Star Wars, but it was such a great follow up, and it's like I remember the name Lawrence Kasdan wrote that. And of course, then he went on to write Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I was pretty struck by his ability. And so those are some of the names. Scott Frank is another one. He was just at the Emmy Awards last night. His work, films like Get Shorty, I have a great deal of respect for him.
The Starling follows after Lilly suffers a loss. The combative Starling takes nest beside her quiet home. The feisty bird taunts and attacks the grief-stricken Lilly. On her journey to expel the Starling, she rediscovers her will to live and capacity for love. What inspired you to write this story?
I think I was really more interested in the aftermath of a tragedy, not necessarily trying to write an inspirational story, but one more that was about how do we get through things? How do we try to get past things? I don't like to say, how do we get over things? Because that suggests like, okay, I'm over it. I've moved on, we get over relationships, breakups, maybe if we're lucky, right? Most of the time we move past things that are really hard. And so I just wanted to explore that. That was sort of the basis for understanding how do we get past things that seem very unfair, very random. I think the universe is pretty unforgiving. It's pretty chaotic at times. I know we try to make sense of it. We try to rationalize why things happen, why bad things happen to good people. And I don't think it's always so easy to apprehend why that is. And so, yeah, mine wasn't like trying to point anybody necessarily in the direction, but more or less exploring how these two people found a way past it.
One of the things that I thought was really unique was your ability to kind of write these two characters who are married, you know what I mean? They're a couple, but they handled the tragedy in two different ways. How important was it for you to highlight that coming across the pages?
Yeah, I think it was really important to me because I really wanted it to feel like they weren't on the same page at all. And, it doesn't mean that one was necessarily in a healthier place than the other. I think what happened with him was far more frightening. What she was dealing with and what she was going through, the pressures of work and home and her life sort of falling apart, equally as troubling probably. But it was kind of, I guess I did a lot of research, if you will call it research, into these types of tragedies, and talking to people who have gotten beyond these sort of tragedies and how they got there. It's kind of like I entered the jungle on one side and I came out the other. Don't ask me to go back and show you that path, because it's fraught with dangers and disasters, and it's really difficult. There's not a roadmap for it, and so I think they each find their way, back to each other, and that's the only way. I think if there's I hate to say this, if there's a message here, I feel like the message is that, they lost their child. Yes. Are they going to lose their marriage? That becomes a question central to the story. I think she's not only mourning the loss of her child, which she is, and I think they're always going to be mourning the loss of their child, but the question is, are they going to mourn the loss of their marriage? And so that's what we're hopefully rooting for at the end.
Where did the ideal of coming and bringing in the Starling come to fruition?
I needed some way I felt like one of her chief antagonists, if you will, was this world that is kind of indifferent to what she's going through. At least I wanted to express it somehow, rather than just have a bunch of people talk about it. And so that was a way for me to kind of visually express it, and then bring out whatever discussions stem from it. And so that's why, when Kevin Kline kind of expresses it near the end, where he's talking to Jack about, it can feel very personal, and when it's not, but that's what having it as sort of some symbol allowed me to do.
What was it like seeing Melissa McCarthy bring to life this character in Lilly?
Man, it's incredible. I tell you, you don't, it's like beyond your wildest dreams when you actually see and hear that real actors want to be in your film that you wrote, and the real director wants to make it. It's very humbling, that's all I can say. It's just, you feel privileged, that's for sure, because you want whatever you wrote to be good, right? And you realize for it to be good, it has to be more than just what it is on the page, right? It's such a collaborative process. We always say that, but when it's something you created, then you see other people working on it, you realize, oh boy, right down to the set designer, if they don't get this right, this thing could look terrible and then not feel right. And so I was really grateful that her considerable talents were brought to bear.
Well, what's one of the things that kind of surprised you about working with her?
I think with all three of the main characters, I was surprised at, how good they were at improv, and like they would take the scene and they would shoot it a couple times, and then they could kind of just be the characters and say the lines, but in their own way, in a different voice at times. And I was, pleasantly surprised by some of the little gems that came out of there, like when she's talking to the exterminator, and he's talking about 400 billion birds. And she's like, I don't know, that seems really high, isn't that high? Like she's both questioning him, and at the same time, she's terrified of this idea that there's 400 billion birds. And in truth, it was, I think the figure I looked up, it's between 50 and 400. They don't know. There's no way to count, so who's doing bird census, right? But that was just so well done. That was really good.
And that's one of the things that I thought that I really enjoyed, because you have a very raw story to begin with, a very personal one, and a very sad one, as you can say, but you also bring a lot of it to life in some aspects of comedy. So take me behind the balance there for you between trying to figure out when you want people to laugh and when you want people to be sad.
Yeah, I think it has to feel real, right? They have to kind of go together. And so it doesn't feel jarring to go from one to the other. And so to do that, I tried to make sure that the comedy, at least for me, was coming out of something natural, consequential to the story, and true to the characters. I didn't want it to feel alien or as a diversion. It had to mean something. So yeah, I just tried to look at everyday life as being a bit absurd at times, and a bit ridiculous, and try to take advantage of that truth, with my characters. Like for example, the Dickie character, young guy, so little clueless maybe, trying to talk to a bird like it's in a coma. It's funny, I mean, but
exactly that moment to me, she just brought it back to me. Like I said, I watched this morning, so it kind of brought it back to me. It was a well-placed laugh, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, and I felt like it was something that was something he would say, something he would do, right? And but yeah, because I mean, it could get a little bit heavy and maybe not so believable to be doing a death watch for this bird, right? Sitting Shiva on this bird right now. So yeah, you want to be careful about that stuff. I think, for me, it's as much, you're talking about the balance between comedy and, drama. It's also, be careful of the melodrama, be careful of the sort of pitfalls of a story like this. You have to be very careful of over sentimentalizing things. And, those are the pitfalls typically in a story like this.
what was it like seeing this film for the first time?
Oh man, talk about nerve-wracking. Netflix sent me a link, right, to watch it, because Melfi had delivered it already. And so they sent me a link and I couldn't even watch it. I had my wife watch it. I was like, tell me if it's good. I can't bear it, because I was out there for a lot of the shoot days. And, I was like, man, some of the stuff feels really great. Everybody's very complimentary, but you just never know, So when I sat down and watched it for the first time, I enjoyed it. I was struck by what made it and what didn't make it. There were some other storylines that they had to cut simply for time. Time is critical. It was only 112, I think, page script that ended up, coming out to like 2 hours and 42 minutes. So they had to really make some heavy cuts, especially with characters that I really like Timothy Olyphant. They cut a lot of him out, but I understood why, and that refocus the story more on the couple. Yeah, so the first time it was, boy, I'll tell you, it's kind of like when you're seeing your lines that you wrote come out of somebody's mouth on a film set. It's scary. You're like, oh shit, you're like, this is real. They don't know that I'm not real. What are they doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Why are you making this film? Why are you putting millions of dollars into this? Does nobody know I don't have a fucking clue what I'm talking about? Okay, so that's what you'd feel like. That's what you kind of, then you try to pump yourself back up, and then of course they'll let you down again.
That's fantastic. That's raw. That's raw. It's great to hear it kind of go like that. And that kind of follows with, what's it like receiving the news that your script was purchased? You know what I mean? How does that feel?
Yeah, it's interesting because this script has had a life. It's like a cat. It's had 9 lives. It seemed like it was, going to get made a few times, and then it fell apart, for whatever reasons. I mean, it doesn't take much, trust me. All it takes is one actor to get offered something else, or a director, and it goes away. And that's just, it teaches you to like remain calm. It kind of teaches you about this business, so to speak, where you're just like, okay, man, don't get your hopes up. And I remember telling somebody, okay, this friend of mine, Henry, New Line Cinema was interested in this film. And I'm like, Henry, take it from me, you don't want to get your hopes up, okay? And then the next day they paid him like $350,000 for a screenplay. I was like, God damn. I probably just sound like this jaded. I just wanted to protect him. But so, you go through and you learn to deal with the fact that it's a very difficult thing to get a film made. But once this thing had the momentum and it had actors attached and it had the financing, they wanted to secure it as fast as possible from me, And so they they were more than happy to pay me for the script right away because they didn't have the rights to it. I could have like gone, hey, now it's my turn to go off and go in a different direction, but not that I ever would have. But anyway, it was, yeah, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Yeah. Life-changing for sure.
For sure. Before we go here, do you have any upcoming projects that you can tell us about?
Well, another film I wrote it was originally called Moon of Popping Trees. It's a Western. They just finished shooting it. It's called Dead for a Dollar, directed by Walter Hill with Christoph Waltz and Willem Dafoe and Rachel Brosnahan, the marvelous Miss Maisel is in it. So I'm excited to see that. I think it'll be coming out next spring. So it's a Western. We don't get to see a lot of those, but it'll be interesting to see what happened. They shot it. In New Mexico. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Like, yeah, for sure. I'm excited for you. I enjoyed the film. I thought it was fantastic. So I just wanted to thank you for your time today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for watching.